tracking these swings as well. Quartz Senior Europe correspondent Jason Karaian in London. And Jason, again, what we're seeing here as the market has just opened in New York, is it reflective of what we're seeing in the global markets today?
Yeah, it is. There's a bit of a bump today, but let's not forget that since the Brexit vote last week, global stocks have wiped off more than $3 trillion. So as one analyst put it, there's bound to be opportunities amidst the rubble, and I think we're seeing a bit of bargain hunting there.
We also have obviously faced very much talk that Britain could be now heading for a recession. Word today that the British pound has rebounded, but as you mentioned, only to a degree. What is the long-term forecast right now for the UK economy?
It's highly uncertain. Everything, economics, politics, it's all kind of up in the air at the moment. But the long-term outlook, if you talk to most economists, it's pretty bleak. The pound, like stocks, is up a little bit today, but it's still down, let's say, 10% versus the dollar over the past few days. And a lot of forecasts call for it to fall another 10%, and probably either no growth or potentially a mild recession next year.
And we are wondering, we have wondered, as the British Prime Minister David Cameron has said that he will not institute Article 50, of course, the formal declaration to leave the EU on the part of the UK. He will leave that to his successor. So if we see, Jason, a 4-month period now where the British pound does not make real gains, and we see perhaps a run on the central banks in Europe that we have seen in the last few days, can you see an economic impetus to undoing the Brexit vote?
Well, there's a real scramble amongst people on both sides about what this vote exactly means. It's not necessarily binding on the British Parliament, but obviously the will of the people, more than 1 million voters than the other side wanted to, voted to leave the EU. So there's some kind of technical ways that maybe this can be undone, and we have kind of a lame duck prime minister at the moment, so we need to see who's in charge in the next few months and what they want to do with this Article 50, which kind of sets off the starting gun for negotiations to leave. There's some that think that it might never be invoked, and there can just be some kind of informal arrangement that we find out what our relationship is vis-a-vis the EU. Everything is up in the air, and that's really why we're seeing such volatility in the markets, because there's no certainty whatsoever.
And now that negotiations will have to ensue between the UK and the EU as to what sort of relationship they will have moving forward, from what position is the UK able to negotiate?
It's in a pretty weak position. There was one metaphor I heard that before the vote, it's kind of like it was putting a gun to its head, and then when it actually went through to it, it shot the gun up in the air and then closed the door on itself. So basically what Article 50 means is when you invoke that, then the other 27 members of the EU negotiate together their starting position. The UK is completely shut out of those talks. It's in the midst of what could be, like we talked about, a recession. The pound is falling, stocks are falling. It's not in a super strong negotiating position, certainly not one you would decide on ahead of time. I think that the Leave campaign thinks that they have a lot of leverage on the EU, but we've already seen a pretty united front from the other 27 members of the EU. Angela Merkel, who will be key here in Germany, doesn't seem too keen on this kind of casual, informal relationship with the negotiations. They're going to play hardball, and the UK honestly doesn't have a lot of leverage.
Yeah, so many EU leaders are saying, essentially, let's get on with this already. Again, as we look at the big board, stocks up here on the exchange floor, roughly 180 or so points. Jason Karaian, we very much appreciate the time today.
Thanks a lot.